3 true horror stories. I never planned on visiting Cedar Creek, Ohio, but when my cousin Ryan invited me to his new farmhouse, I thought it would be a peaceful getaway. The town was small, isolated, tucked into the thick woods. As I drove down the long road to his place, the air felt unnaturally still, the kind of silence that made my skin crawl. Ryan's house stood in the distance, dark and aged. It was the kind of place you'd expect to find in old horror movies, the kind with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. When I knocked on the door, Ryan answered with a strained smile. "Hey, glad you made it," he said, his voice a little too cheerful. I stepped inside, immediately feeling a chill in the air. The house was quieter than I expected, too quiet. No creaking of old floorboards, no distant sounds from the forest outside. The silence was unsettling. As we sat down to talk, Ryan kept glancing nervously at the windows. He said the house had always been this way, that it was just the old wood creaking, but something in his eyes told me otherwise. Later that evening, we decided to take a walk through the woods behind the house. "You'll love it," Ryan assured me, his voice too calm. But as we stepped into the trees, the atmosphere shifted. The wind howled, but it wasn't a normal sound. It was almost like whispering, as if the trees themselves were speaking. I stopped in my tracks. "Do you hear that?" I asked. Ryan just shrugged, a nervous laugh escaping him. "It's nothing. Just the wind." But it didn't feel like just the wind. The further we walked, the darker the woods became. The trees seemed to close in around us, and the whispers grew louder, sharper. Suddenly, I saw Ida, a tall figure, standing motionless between the trees. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but when I blinked, it was closer. Much closer. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. I turned to look at him, but he wasn't there. Panic surged in my chest. I spun around, my heart pounding, but the figure was gone. My breaths came in shallow gasps. Where had he gone? I stumbled back, running blindly through the trees. The air felt thick, suffocating, and the whispering became frantic, louder with every step. When I finally made it back to the house, I burst through the door, desperate for safety. Ryan was sitting in the living room, staring blankly ahead. "What happened?" I asked, but he didn't respond. The door slammed shut behind me, and I felt a cold presence in the room. The air was heavier now, and the house seemed to pulse with something unseen, something waiting. I turned to Ryan, who still hadn't moved, and that's when I heard the sound of scratching at the window. The whispers were back, and this time, they weren't from the trees. The scratching at the window grew louder, more frantic. I stood frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest. The room felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. I turned to Ryan, hoping for some reassurance, but he hadn't moved. His eyes were wide, staring at nothing, his expression vacant, as though he was somewhere far away. I called his name, but he didn't respond. Panic twisted my stomach into knots. It was as if the house had taken him. His body was there, but his soul was lost to something much darker. The scratching sound continued, sharp and relentless, like nails on glass. I slowly approached the window, my breath shallow. The wind outside had died down, yet the sound persisted. I reached out, my hand trembling as I drew the curtains back just a little. My eyes scanned the yard, but there was nothing. No animals, no shadows, just the pale glow of the moon. The air outside was thick with stillness, but I knew it wasn't over. Something was out there, watching. A low thud echoed from somewhere deep within the house. My blood ran cold. It wasn't the usual creak of old wood. It sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate, as though someone was walking around the house, getting closer. I backed away from the window, my mind racing. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice trembling, but still, He didn't respond. I felt a chill at the back of my neck. The house felt alive, almost breathing with me, waiting for me to make the next move. Every instinct told me to leave, to run, but I couldn't bring myself to move. My legs felt like they were stuck to the floor, the air around me growing heavier with each passing second. The footsteps grew louder, and I could hear them moving across the floor above us, slow and measured, as if something or someone was methodically searching for something. A soft voice, too soft to be real, whispered my name from somewhere near the stairs. My blood ran cold. Come to me. The voice was unmistakable, but not Ryan's. It was a whisper that slithered into my mind, coiling around my thoughts. I didn't dare move, afraid to find out where it was coming from. My skin crawled with the sensation of unseen eyes watching me, of something waiting in the dark. "Ryan!" I shouted, my voice louder this time. Still, there was no response. My heart raced, and my breathing became shallow, ragged. The air seemed to thicken, pressing down on me as though something was suffocating the room. The whispers continued, but now they were coming from all directions. It felt like the house itself was speaking, its walls murmuring things I couldn't understand. I stumbled backward, tripping over a chair, and fell to the floor. As I scrambled to get up, I noticed a dark stain on the carpet beneath me. It looked fresh, as if something or someone had spilled something sinister. I looked up, my eyes scanning the room, and that's when I saw it. A shadow, moving slowly across the far wall. It was tall, unnatural, and it seemed to bend in ways that didn't make sense. It had no face, no form, just darkness, an absence that grew and shifted like liquid smoke. A sudden crash broke the silence, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps rushing down the stairs. I spun around, my pulse racing. The door to the living room opened, and I saw Ryan standing in the doorway. But it wasn't Ryan. His eyes were black, hollow, and his mouth twisted into an unnatural grin. His body seemed wrong, as if it was being controlled by something else. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice shaking with fear. He stepped forward, but it wasn't him anymore. It was something pretending to be him. His movements were jerky, like a puppet on strings, and his grin stretched unnaturally wide. "You shouldn't have come," the voice that wasn't his said. It was deep, raspy, like it came from the depths of the earth. I backed away, my legs giving out beneath me. The figure in front of me laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. "You can't leave," it said, its voice growing more distorted with each word. "You're already part of this house." I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing. I needed to escape. The back door was only a few feet away, but the figure moved faster, blocking my path. Its shadow stretched across the room, enveloping everything in its reach. Without thinking, I bolted for the kitchen, my hands shaking as I yanked open the door to the back porch. I stepped outside into the cold night, but the whispers followed me, lingering in the air, heavy and suffocating. My breath came out in clouds, and I could feel the frost in the air biting at my skin, but I didn't dare stop. I ran into the woods, my footsteps muffled by the thick layer of fallen leaves, but the sound of someone pursuing me was getting closer. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was nothing. No figure, no shadow, just the dark woods, stretching endlessly behind me. But the whispers didn't stop. They surrounded me, echoing in my ears, growing louder and louder until they drowned out all other sounds. I wasn't alone. Something was out there, waiting for me, and it wasn't going to let me leave. The forest behind the house in Oregon stretched out like a maze of shadows and silence. My legs burned as I kept running, branches slapping against my face, roots grabbing at my ankles. Behind me, the whispers hadn't stopped. They slithered through the trees, rising and falling like a breath, sometimes taunting, sometimes pleading. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from whatever had taken Ryan. But the deeper I went, the more the forest changed. The air felt thicker, unnatural. Trees seemed to lean toward me, branches like claws, the sky above vanishing into a blanket of black. I came across a clearing and stopped to catch my breath, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The moonlight spilled into the space, offering a sliver of comfort. But it didn't last. The silence here wasn't peaceful. It was wrong. Too still. Too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Then I noticed something in the middle of the clearing, old, half-rotten cabin I'd never seen before, even though I'd grown up not far from here. It looked abandoned, but the door was slightly open, creaking as it moved with the breeze that seemed to come from nowhere. Something inside me said to turn back, but my curiosity overrode the fear. Maybe I'd find answers. Maybe I'd find help. I pushed the door open and stepped. The air was thick with the scent of mold and burnt wood. Everything was coated in dust, but something had been disturbed. Footprints. Not just one set, but many. Leading in circles, like someone or something had been pacing. On the walls were symbols, carved deep into the wood, some bleeding with fresh scratches. I reached out to touch one, and a jolt shot through my fingers like static. The room seemed to shift around me for a second. Just a flicker, but I saw something in that blink. Figures standing around me, motionless, faceless, watching. I blinked and they were gone. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. My breath came faster. I turned toward the hallway and called out, "Is someone here?" No answer, just the floorboards groaning under my own weight. I walked deeper into the cabin, the air growing colder with each step. Then I heard Ida low murmur, like someone talking to themselves. I followed the sound to a small room in the back. It was lit only by a single candle, flickering despite the lack of wind. In the corner sat an old woman, hunched and shaking. She didn't look up as I entered. Her hands were moving in strange patterns, her voice low and rhythmic. "Ma'am?" I asked, inching closer. She stopped and slowly turned her head. Her eyes were white, completely blind, but she looked straight at me. "You brought it with you," she whispered. I froze. "Brought what?" Her mouth quivered. "It's tied to you now. Once the house marks you, it doesn't let go. You..." But it followed. My throat went dry. What do I do? How do I stop it? She leaned forward. "You don't. You endure, or you disappear." The candle suddenly went out. I backed up fast, heart racing. I turned to run, but the hallway behind me was gone, just a wall of rotting wood. I spun around, and the woman was no longer in the chair. The room was empty, but I could hear her voice behind me, whispering the same phrase over and over. "You shouldn't have opened the door." I clawed at the wall where the hallway had been. It felt like it was pulsing, warm and alive. Suddenly, I was yanked backward, not by hands, but by a force, like gravity twisting in the wrong direction. I was thrown back into the main room. The door slammed shut behind me, and something moved in the shadows. I didn't wait. I dove at the window, shattered it with my elbow, and pulled myself out, cutting my arms and legs on the glass. I didn't stop running. By the time I reached the edge of the woods, the first light of dawn was breaking. I collapsed in someone's yard, sobbing and covered in blood. They called the police, the medics, and I told them what happened. They didn't find Ryan. They didn't find the cabin either. But the scratches on my skin never healed right. Some nights I still hear that whisper, right behind me, even when no one's there. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see the house again, waiting in the trees, calling me home. Months passed. I moved to Seattle, tried to rebuild my life, convinced myself what happened in the woods was just trauma cementing my mind had twisted into horror. Therapy didn't help much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw a Hearthold woman whispering in the dark, her empty eyes burning into mine. I never told anyone the full truth. Who would believe it anyway? That a house followed me? That I was marked by something that didn't belong in this world? I tried to ignore the signs of the lights flickering when I was upset, the feeling of being watched in mirrors, the scent of burning wood that would come and go. But deep down, I knew. It hadn't ended. It was waiting. One night, I got a message, a burner number, no ID, just a photo. It showed a stretch of forest, damp with fog. In the background, barely visible, was the cabin. Same warped boards, same crooked roof. Beneath it was a caption, "It found you." I dropped my phone, heart hammering. I hadn't told anyone where that cabin was. Hell, I couldn't even find it again when I tried. I thought about leaving the state, but something in me knew it wouldn't matter. It would always follow. That night, I heard scratching inside the walls of my apartment. Not mice. It was slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging through wood. I didn't sleep. The next day, I checked myself into a hotel downtown, trying to stay in a place the thing wouldn't recognize. But that night, the dreams came. In the dream, I stood in front of the cabin again, only this time it wasn't abandoned. The windows glowed with flickering candlelight. Inside, I could see shadows moving. Not people, something else. Crawling on the walls, clicking bones. I tried to wake up, but couldn't. I walked forward, through the open door, and the floor melted beneath my feet. I sank into the house like quicksand, and the last thing I heard before waking up was the old woman's voice, right in my ear. "Come back. It's time." When I woke up, my hotel room window was wide open. I was on the 12th floor. I reached out to the only person who might understand Callie, Ryan's sister. She never believed he just disappeared. She thought I was hiding something. I told her everything. Every nightmare. Every whisper. Every scratch. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "I've been dreaming about it too." I froze. She described the cabin, the woman, the shadows. Somehow, it had started reaching into her world too. Maybe because of Ryan. Maybe because we were both tied to what happened. We decided to go back. Face it. End Ida if we could. We returned to the forest, retraced our steps, and after hours of searching, there it was, just like before. The cabin stood in the clearing, as if it had been waiting. No birds, no wind, just silence, pressing down on us. We stepped inside. Everything was exactly as I remembered. The candle, the symbols, even the scent. But this time, the air felt heavier, charged with something ancient. We walked toward the back room. The candle lit itself. Then we heard footsteps above us. There was no second floor. Callie gripped my hand. "Do you see it?" she whispered. I nodded. A shadow moved along the ceiling, defying gravity, crawling upside down. Then it dropped, landing in front of us without a sound. It didn't have a face, just hollow eyes and a mouth sewn shut with rusted wire. It raised a hand, and I felt my chest tighten, like something inside me was being pulled out. I screamed. Callie shouted words I didn't understand. Latin, maybe. The thing twitched. Then the cabin shook. The walls cracked. The symbols burned bright red. Something inside the floor opened a black pit, swirling and hungry. I knew what I had to do. I ran at the creature, pushed it into the hole. It screamed not with sound, but with pressure, like my brain was being crushed. I nearly fell in too, but Callie pulled me back. The pit sealed shut. The house groaned, like it was dying. Then silence. We burned the cabin, watched it collapse into ash. I don't know if it's really over, but the dreams have stopped. The whispers are gone. And for the first time in a year, I feel like I'm not being watched. Still, sometimes when I walk by dense woods, I catch a glimpse of something between the trees. Not a figure, just an opening, like a door. And I keep walking, because I know if I ever stop and stare too long, it might open again.